Hey everybody, I wanted to make a quick video just addressing this very common problem that we've been running into since we've all been stuck at home, which is how do I tune my violin? And it can be pretty tricky. So I'm going to cover both the fine tuners and the pegs. And I'm also going to give you some resources about how to match the pitch. And I'm going to try to help you avoid some of those really sticky situations where my pegs are slipping and my strings are getting super out of tune and I don't know how to fix it. So hopefully this will sort of save you a lot of headache down the road. So let me share my screen here. And you'll see I have a picture of my fine tuners and a picture of my pegs. Now, for most of you, I recommend sticking with the fine tuners unless you're really having issues tuning the violin. The fine tuners are meant for very small adjustments to the intonation. The pegs are for bigger adjustments or are intended for people who are really experienced with tuning who know exactly what to do. Some of you may have full-sized instruments, and a lot of full-sized instruments only have the E string fine tuner, and then you have to use the pegs for the other strings. So that's why I'm going to be covering both and how to use both. So the fine tuners are very simple. The rule that you learned as a child of lefty loosey, righty tighty applies here. So turning the fine tuner to the left or counterclockwise, that will loosen the string and it will cause the note to go down. So the pitch of the string will go down when you turn it to the left. When you turn it to the right, the pitch of the string will go up and you'll be tightening the fine tuner. So it's pretty obvious that the string that runs right into the fine tuner is the one that you're going to be tuning, right? So this aspect is very intuitive. However, one of the problems that we might run into is, as you can see with this picture, this fine tuner has gotten pretty tight. So it may have already reached a point where I can't turn it right anymore. And if that happens, I run into an issue where I'm going to need to actually loosen that fine tuner a bunch of times until it's able to be turned again. And then I have to go back and raise the string, because once I do that, my string is going to be very, very loose and the pitch is going to be very low. So in order to go back and raise my string, I'm going to need to go to the pegs. So now I'll explain the pegs for those of you who have to resort to that. The pegs are extremely sensitive because the string is under an enormous amount of tension. So this string is pulling hard on that peg. And the only thing keeping the peg from completely slipping and keeping the string from totally unwinding itself is just the friction between the peg and the peg box. So the peg is actually shaped kind of like a cone or like a funnel or something like that. So it's wider here than it is here. So the peg is basically just wedged in there, wedged into this hole in the peg box, okay? So before you turn the peg, what I want you to know is that as soon as you turn it, as soon as you kind of break the seal of that tension, the peg is going to want to work its way out and start slipping and unwinding itself. So obviously, when you turn the peg away from you, it's going to raise the pitch of the string by stretching it. And when you turn the peg toward you, it's going to lower the pitch of the string by loosening it, okay? And that's as long as your string is wound correctly. You should see if your strings are wound the way they are in this photo. That is correct. I've experienced the rare instrument where the exact opposite direction is true. So just make sure that your strings look the way they do in the photo before you try turning them. So the main thing that I want you to know is that when you turn the pegs, you want to be pushing in toward the peg box. So on this side right here, I want to be pushing to the left. On this side right here, I want to be pushing to the right, okay? That's very important because we want to keep the peg wedged in there. So as I'm turning, I'm actually pushing in a little bit. The thing that we have to remember is that the way that the strings are wound is also very important. So right here, I have my E string. Can you see the E string running into that peg? And then here I have A, D, and G. Okay, so before any of you turns the string or turns the peg, make sure that you're already kind of pushing in a little bit before you turn. And then in the rare situation where the peg is just so sticky that you can't turn it at all, then you can start trying to wiggle the peg back and forth a little bit and actually work it out in this direction. But I wouldn't recommend that unless you've really tried a bunch of times and you can't turn the peg at all. Okay, so then the next question is, okay, what do I do to actually find the right pitch to tune to? Well, I have a couple resources here and I'll be linking these in the description, so check the description of the video. The app that I use that I absolutely love and recommend to anybody is called Tonal Energy Tuner. And the little icon in the App Store looks like this. It's available on both Android and iPhone. And you can go to a screen on the app that looks like this that will tell you exactly how high or how low your string is tuned to, and that as long as you've watched this video and you know which direction to turn, that pretty much will tell you what to do. It also has a ton of other functions. It has a metronome that's really customizable. You can even upload recordings that you've made of yourself and it will analyze the intonation if you played in tune or not. So it's a great app. I think this app costs about $4.99 right now. There are other apps that will tune your violin. I don't think any of them that I've seen is free, but they do go as low as about $1. So if you're looking for something cheaper, I would definitely search for something. Another option that you have is a tone generator. It's basically a tuning fork, but electronic. So in this particular generator, it's totally free. It's very easy to use. When I hit play here, it plays the pitch of my open A string. So all I do is I basically play the pitch, I listen to it, and I play my violin and I see if they match. And that requires you use your ear very well, that you can actually hear, oh yeah, that's too low, so I need to turn the peg this way, etc. If you want to tune your other strings using this one, you just click on this bar and it's going to bring up all of the notes that there are. And so the open strings on the violin are A4, there's E5, which is right here, so that would be your E string. Then D4 is your open D string, and G3 is your open G string. So if you can kind of find those pitches and you want to try to tune your violin that way just by listening, that's what you do. Something about this tuner or this pitch generator is that I don't really like the sine wave sound. It doesn't sound like the violin, so it's very difficult to match the violin pitch to it. So I recommend using a sawtooth wave. I think that one sounds more like the violin and it makes it easier to hear, am I playing the right pitch? So basically, that's how you do it. You either use your ear or you use something that will tell you which direction to tune in, and you just turn the peg or turn the fine tuner in the direction you need to. Now, something else that I recommend is that you constantly are playing the string somehow while you're making adjustments. I wouldn't just sort of kind of turn blindly and then play. I always, if I'm tuning, I do something like this. So then I can actually tell exactly what's happening with the string. And if I start to hear this, okay, something's going wrong there, right? So that's me just tuning with my ear, but I'm constantly plucking the string to make sure it works. Another thing that you can try is the way that professionals use their fine tuner is we reach around with the left hand and then we play. So that's how I recommend using your fine tuners if you can figure out how to turn it the correct direction, because it's just much easier to actually hear the string while you're turning. If we do blind tuning, it's easy for the string to start slipping and we don't even realize it, and then the pegs are kind of backing themselves out. So just a quick reminder that if your string does back out of this peg for whatever reason, I mean, that can happen on its own, even when you're not trying to tune the instrument. If it does back out of the peg for whatever reason, there's a little hole that is, here, let me get my writing tool. there's a little hole that's somewhere right in here that the string just feeds into. And all you do is you just have to get the string straightened back out. So you need to run your fingers along the string until it's straight enough that you can feed it in. And then you just feed it into that hole and start turning the peg. I recommend getting it kind of all the way through the hole before you start turning. And you want to make sure that the string is wound so that it's close to the outside of the peg box. So you see in this picture, the person has wound their strings correctly, where all of the winding is all back here. But this person has pushed in their peg as they turned, so the winding gradually moved out toward this part of the peg, and then the string is very close to the peg box. And then the opposite thing has to happen on this side. You have to push this way, and now all the winding is here, and the string is toward the outside of the peg box. The reason for that is because having the string wound this way creates a lot of friction between the string and the side of the peg box, and that again keeps the peg from slipping out. If you have it wound so that the string is coming off the peg like this, then you're kind of going to have issues. The string is really easily going to unwind itself with even the slightest amount of pressure. So you might think, oh, it's in tune, and then you go to play and the string is like, so if that happens, this video should help with that. And eventually you might just have to kind of call a violinist friend and say, hey, I'm kind of in a sticky situation here, and somebody will be able to help you. It's hard to irreparably damage the violin while tuning, but there are all kinds of weird things that can happen like this. And so hopefully this video will give you a sense of how to get started with tuning and how to avoid some of those really sticky situations. Okay, so happy tuning, and check the description for these resources that I mentioned. Thanks, guys, and have a great week.